a word that reflects my own journey. It's been difficult, growing up and building a career in the software development space. And it's because of that word, tenacity, to push through, to never give up, was the reason why I'm actually here today meeting you. And so that's how the word tenacity comes to be, and that's why I named my company Tenacity, to reflect my own personal journey and that of many Africans around the continent. It's difficult where we find ourselves, but we are still pushing through. We are not giving up regardless of the situation.
This is the JB Show, and it's your life by design. Welcome to the JB Podcast. If you're meeting me for the first time, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've built at least 3 businesses that I've taken from scratch to top line revenue of between $500,000 to $1.5 million US dollars. The reason why I have this platform is to share the lessons I've learned along the way and the mistakes I've made, what worked and didn't work, so that maybe you can be helped even as you plod on this journey to build your own dream life and your own dream business. If you're regularly here on the show, you would know a couple of weeks ago, I shared some thoughts around making a case for apprenticeship, the power that the process of mentorship has in just preparing us. Obviously, that's the entire ethos of this platform. It's mentoring, sharing examples, not just my own examples, my own experiences, but also the experiences of my guests, so that you don't have to make the mistakes they make, and you can achieve a lot in a shorter time. What took us 5 years, what took us 10 years to learn, you can learn that in one show, in one sitting. That's the power that this has. I've had a protege working with me for the last couple of months, and every now and again we have the opportunity to go back and forth and just to listen. Their questions are asked, there's feedback that is provided, and in one of the sessions some questions came up and I said, I think we have to get this on camera. That's how come we are here today. And that protege, who's my guest today on the show, is Mr. David Paul Conte. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
David, you have a business. What's the business called?
It's called Tenacity.
Tenacity. What's the question I ask you all the time regarding that's related to the name of the company?
How tenacious are you?
How tenacious are you? So I ask David all the time, David, how tenacious are you? And it's a very interesting. How did you come up with Tenacity as the name of the company?
Well, it's really a word that reflects my own journey.
Okay.
It's been difficult, growing up and building a career in the software development space. And it's because of that word, tenacity, to push through, to never give up, was the reason why I'm actually here today meeting you, getting to know people like you. And so that's how the word tenacity comes to be, and that's why I named my company Tenacity, to reflect my own personal journey and that of many Africans around the continent. Because it's difficult where we find ourselves, but we are still pushing through. We are not giving up regardless of the situation. We're still pushing through. We're still finding solutions. For example, I learned how to code without having a proper working laptop. It was something that we call a desktop laptop, where you only use it when you connect it to electricity. And so I had to struggle all through that, through my software engineering program, and then I graduated. I had the opportunity to work at QCell, a telecommunication company. And so the thing is this, there is no excuse for the situation that we find ourselves. We just need to push through. We just need to be very tenacious. And so that's the reason why I named my company Tenacity, so that I could reflect not just my journey, but that of many Africans.
So it's Tenacity Technology Limited?
It's Tenacity Technologies Limited, yes.
Tenacity TTL. Now, so how did we get to meet each other? Just how much of that do you still recall?
Well, it's really a thing of visibility. I've been sharing my journey on LinkedIn. I put myself out there, and you saw me, sent a message, and then we started from there.
I liked some of the articles. I think I liked all the articles that you had been putting out, and there was depth to the article. You could see the context. It had very rich texture, very rich content that were there. You could see, again, like I said, the depth of thought that had gone into those articles, and I said, okay, this is a good gentleman. Obviously, how I would however I stumbled to one of those articles on LinkedIn, that's also, I can't even recall. But the fact is, I stumbled on one of your articles and I read a few more, and I thought, this is a very good young man who can not only code, but can write well. It's not oftentimes you have the two together. And even with the help of AI, if you read something, this is a directly produced. It's AI produced. You could see, you could tell that this is, but you could see yours went beyond that, and so that's how I picked you up. Came to the office, signed an MOU to get TTL off the ground. What's been the biggest area of growth for you?
Well, it's really been a thing of mindset, because I've benefited in other ways financially, but it's really a thing of mindset. Working around you, I've learned that really speed is the currency of the marketplace. The faster you move, the more advantage you get. Those are some of the things I've really learned, and those are things I will apply as my journey continues.
One of the things I shared in my last podcast on A Case for Apprenticeship, that what you benefit from a mentor, it's not just the knowledge you get, but the access to his network. How much access have you actually had to my network? How many people that you now know that have been relationship that I've nurtured for the last 20 years, that in 6 months you now have access to those? Reflect on a few. Give examples of those moments and the number of people you've been exposed to in my network that I've taken 20 years to build. And in a period of 6 to 9 months, you now have access to that.
Well, it's all the way from the top, because of your connection and your good relationship with that of AfriCell. I've been able to meet the MD of AfriCell and several other top executives at both AfriCell and that of AfriMoney, even the technical guys there at AfriMoney. And you made it possible for us, for Tenacity as a company, to be able to build the AfriMoney WhatsApp platform, which is a solution that is actually live, where you could use all the services, almost all the services of AfriMoney on WhatsApp. You could buy data, you could send money, you could check your balance, and all those stuff on WhatsApp. You made that possible because you introduced me to Shadi, and when I met Shadi, I showed Shadi that, hey, we could build solution on WhatsApp. I demoed something I made, like using anything the technical guys will know, and I demoed it to him. He saw it and he was like, hey, let's get this guy towards AfriMoney. And then connection to connection, I was able to develop that solution with Tenacity for AfriMoney, and you made that possible. So I want to say that I really appreciate the opportunity that you've given me. You've opened doors that would have never been possible, really. And
that's one of the powers of mentors, having mentors. Like I said, I've built this relationship for years.
Yeah.
And to just have the privilege where in a day, in 24 hours, in a week, you can be exposed to those environments is very powerful.
Yeah.
Now, so we would be sharing a lot of David's story as we go on. But let's come back to what triggered this session we're having. You came around my office, and I'm actually working some stuff so that we would have not just David, but the kinds and the likes of David. You already know the story. The IDT Lab story with Saltine. How Saltine reached out. In this case, I reached out to David, but I reached out to Saltine, and we were able to build we want to build a business, and we're able to build a life. But in all of the discussions we were having with David, you said you wanted to know, the question came like, obviously we had discussed a couple of stuff, but the question you asked was, what was the question you asked? You know, I'll allow you to ask the question around skills.
The question was, what's the greatest skill in business?
What's the greatest skill in business? That was the question David asked. What's the greatest skill? And but I wanted to know a bit more. So beyond that, I pushed again to say, okay, we had discussed a couple of stuff and about products you were developing, not just products for today, but how can we build a product for the long term? You know, beyond services, you know, but really build products that we can own and build for the long term. And then you mentioned that you were thinking of how you could transition from being a developer to the business side of things. I didn't even know what that meant, but I knew there was something that was boiling behind the question you asked. And let's go back again. Why did you have to ask me this question around what's the biggest skill that you need to have in business? And next, for you to say you thought it's important for you to see the other side, not just crunching codes, but to see the other side of how you take these codes and monetize them. Why did you have to do this? Why did you have to ask this?
Well, really, a couple of things was running through my mind when I asked that question. As a software developer, I built a couple of projects. For example, I built a LIA. It's called LinkedIn Intelligence Assistant.
LinkedIn Intelligence Assistant. And what was that? What did you do? What was that?
It's an AI for LinkedIn. So it's a Chrome extension. It's there on LinkedIn, and you can use it to write posts, to get comment suggestion on LinkedIn. So we built that product, and we thought it was the best product that we had, but we were unable to sell it, and now it's not live anymore. So all of those things.
How long did it take you to build Leia?
It took me like 5-6 months, several months.
It took 6 months to build Leia.
Yeah, it took me quite a while. I invested a lot of my time working on that project.
And it's no longer live, you put it down. So continue, because the question I was asking you, why did you want to know the biggest skill in business, and why did you thought it was necessary for you to transition a little?
Yeah, so like I was saying, those things, they were running through my mind. You know, we built a product, we thought it was the best product, we only focused on the technical side. And then we were thinking that as soon as we launched, we were going to get at least 1 million users. But then we only got like 40, and it's been stuck there. So I was like, there has to be something else. There has to be another way, not just writing code, focusing on the product alone. So that was the reason why I asked that question.
And apart from it, I shared a couple of the fundamentals that are required. We talked about the skills. We talked about personality that you have to have. We talked about a character that you have to have. And I shared the fact that, you know, I've learned from Alex Omozi that even some of the things that we talk about that are character, that you could define them as a character or personality that somebody has, they are trainable. These are things that if you take them apart, we talked about when they say somebody's charismatic.
Yeah.
So what does it mean? You know, when you say somebody's charismatic, and so you have to be charismatic to be an entrepreneur, you have to be charismatic. What does that even mean? That if you could take what it takes to be charismatic and break them up, if you break them up, what it takes to be charismatic, and you break them up, what are some of the things that you would take that they say somebody's charismatic? Let's go.
Smile. Shake people's hand firmly.
Shake people's hand firmly. So once you enter you arrive anywhere, smile broadly, smile, shake people's hand firmly, and what else?
Look them in the eye.
Look them in the eye once you're talking and stuff. There are a couple of things. So And these are all things you could break all of them into. When somebody says somebody's charismatic, you can break them into 6 behaviors, 6 skills that you could get somebody to train themselves to do all the time. They can practice it at home. You go into the room and in a firm handshake, you look them in the eye. Everything that it takes to be charismatic can be taught. You could break it down and you can teach them. So that is why it's almost like you're saying, in the long term, even where people are talking about things that are character and personality, they can actually be taught as skills. And that's a discussion for another day. And so I was caught in between. Some of the things are character issues in terms of, your hunger to grow. You have to have a hunger to grow. We talked about Steve Jobs. What did Steve Jobs say?
Stay hungry, stay foolish.
Stay hungry, stay foolish. You have to wake up in the morning and something fighting you. There is somebody called fire in the belly. But you're a self-starter. You're a go-getter. When everybody's complaining about what's not working, you're looking for what's working. Or you're looking for the solution that is in what is not working that can be monetized. And so it takes a different mindset. And again, in the long run, in a longer continuum, all of those can be practiced as skills. And so,
yeah.
But then we squared back down to, even as we talked about what are those skills, what's the biggest skills in business, we squared down to, you talked about sales, and we talked about the entrepreneurship skill itself, the ability, it's like the chef in the kitchen. You may have everything, you may have all the ingredients, but it takes the combination, the timing, the quantity of all of those ingredients put together at the right time, cooked at the right temperature, which is the work of the chef. And that's entrepreneurship. That's the most valuable, skill that you could have as an entrepreneur. But then we went back down to say, if you outside the entrepreneur, what did we say was the next biggest skill?
It was sales.
Sales. Now, why did we say sales was the biggest? Why did we say sales was the biggest skill?
Because, if you have a company, right? If you have a company, you have a product, you can't sell the product. You don't have a product, you don't have a company. Simple as that. And some of the things that we discussed was that salespeople, those are the people that companies treat really, really well because they make money for the company. Really. So, yeah. That's one of the reasons.
And so it's again, and each time you talk about this, people think it's not fair that salespeople are paid much more than anybody in the organization. And I've seen those situations where in startups and in building businesses where the entrepreneur and owner of the business benefits from the long-term results of the business down the line. The business make profits in 3 years, maybe before the entrepreneur is able to draw dividends, or the entrepreneur is able to pay themselves salaries. At the end of the month, the first person that's considered for payment is the person who generated the sales. And oftentimes, they have a fixed base pay, but they have performance-related payments that are made to them that are tied to the results of the organization. The more money the organization makes, the more money they make. And it's so important. And I've seen those situations where people a lot of the time think is unfair. I have built a couple of businesses, and it's been the same all the time. The person who brings in the money, the person who makes the sales, is the most highly paid. There are times where they are even paid much more than the owner of the business, the entrepreneur. There are times it comes to the end of the month, the entrepreneur cannot even draw a salary, but the salesperson gets paid because the bargain was they have to meet a certain target of sales per month, and once they hit that target, they get paid. Even if there's nothing left to pay the entrepreneur, that salesperson gets paid. So the biggest skill in all is the entrepreneur, the skills of the entrepreneur, the ability to bring people together, design the product, to hire people, build the team to work with, and all of those things that you need to put together to now say, I have a product, I have people to work on this product, and obviously, you can't be an entrepreneur and not know how to sell. So the entrepreneur still has the sales process. They know how to sell, even to hire their first employee and whoever they have to work with them. It's a sales process. It's just that they're buying people, they're bringing in people to buy into the dream that they have. And so sales is powerful. Sales is powerful. Next to the skill of the entrepreneur itself, which is the most valuable in business, the skill of the entrepreneur itself, who brings everybody together, the next most valuable in the organization is the salesperson, is the person who brings in the money. I was talking to one of our engineers just now, and he gave an example. Sharif is not here, right? He's not here. Okay, he gave an example of where they used to work in a beverage production company, where the production team would run to 3,000, 100% of the targets that they had to meet for the day, whatever quantities of produce that they were able to do. Their celebration would nowhere near the celebration that kicks in when the sales team comes in and they close a sale. Because no matter how much you pile those things in the store, if they don't get sold, there's nothing. There's this saying that nothing gets done unless somebody sells something. Nothing happens except somebody sells something. And so I have had salespeople running, and like I said, earning, 3, 4 times, 5 times what the next, the manager gets paid. And you would think it's unfair. More than half of those were commissions. And again, nothing happens. I know this, nothing happens unless somebody sells something. So David, that was my answer to you. Two big things. The biggest skill is the entrepreneurship skill itself. You knowing how to put everything together. But the next big one is the sales. Is the sales skills. And there are a couple of reasons why the sales skills would be valuable. One of them is what I said just now. Revenue is the only proof that a business exists. Yes. Unless you sell, that's the only proof that people want this process, and they want it. The best of engineers, the best of HR, the best of technical people that you line up together. We've talked about the fact that you can actually bring in some of the products. Sometimes you don't even have to produce yourself, because there are times where producing these things yourself is so expensive. It's more expensive, and you'd rather want to just outsource. How much of Apple's products are actually just outsourced and produced all the way in China and places, and then brought into the US to be sold there? They're not produced in the US. You don't have factories in the US. A couple of stuff is produced outside. So you can outsource that. But it's the selling, the brand, the marketing, and everything they put around into selling this thing. That's what drives everything at the end of the day. And, sales is based on outcomes. It's funny, people can walk into the office every day and just sit down and wait for 5:30 to go home. The salespeople, they're about the only people who have a target, big target, a number that they must hit. The pressure that is on them is so intense that they have to meet that. And sometimes you can actually have a mediocre product. If you have very solid salespeople, they can sell it. Sales controls, cash flow. And obviously, there are times where there's actually scarcity for good salespeople. The skill, there's a part of it that has to be natural. This is what I think. This is what I believe. There's a part of the sales, the core of the salesperson, that is innate in them. It's almost difficult to train them. The combination of characteristics that they put together in this person, they're aggressive. They break the rules and rules and stuff, but it's something I think we could deep dive on. Anyway, that's a round way to say. That was a beautiful question, and I hope what we've shared, we've rambled a little. Do you have any follow-up question on that as far as the skills is concerned?
Yes, I do. And how do we develop the sales skill? How do we develop?
For who you're talking about?
Let's say you're a technical person now.
You're a technical person.
And you're trying to transition. To sales.
Yes.
What are some of the things that you need to do in order to develop that ability to sell? Well,
again, one of the things that's happened, and this is what I preached, and a couple of times in the past. I hosted one of my guests, and one of the guests they had was that they had to go alone. if you look at what's happened in lots of the cases, you have two major skills involved in the business. There's a product development and there's a sales. There's a sales bit, there's a business development. So who's the designer of the product? And if you know, in the case of Apple, there were two people, two Steves, Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. When you talk about all the products that were designed, it was Steve Wozniak that designed those products. And then, but who was the master in selling them? It was Jobs. So it's important that you're able to bridge. Oftentimes, when you're talking about designers and you're talking about developers, you're talking about features. You're talking about, you know,
always features.
It's features. You want to just see how many features I can load this into this thing to prove. How many features I can load into this thing to just prove next nice thing, to prove that I'm a solid guy, I'm indomitable, I have this skill, so I could load and package all the skills, all the features that you have into this product. But that's not what the markets need. And so what you have to just realize is that unless you're building to customer needs, direct customer needs, you'll be building something nobody wants. Like you build layer and then nobody picked it up. So therefore, there's a sensitivity that you now have to have, that it has to be about the customer and it's not about you. It has to be about the problem that you've identified and not the solution. Oftentimes what happens, we say this a lot, people design solutions. You wake in the morning, this would be a nice solution. You design the solution. Developers, in Sierra Leone, I meet with them all the time. They develop a solution and now go to look for a problem that this solution solves. But it has to be the other way around. You have to be focused on the problem. So what problem am I going to solve in the market, and come back from the problem to design the solution that is required for this. That's the process. And you were talking about, there's something you talked about, Ford and, faster horse versus the combustible engine. Do you remember that?
I did.
So in terms of design, you go with the market. And so therefore, that's why it's important as a developer to just know, I have to go with the market.
Yeah.
And for example, that's when we talked about Ford. When the first combustible engine was developed. And, I think it was Ford that he was asked, how much market research did you do to decide that you're going to go for a combustible? There are times you don't ask the market. In the unique and very small cases, you don't have to ask the market. He said, I was just saying that if he had asked the market, he would have asked for a faster horse. But innovation now meant he did something that was completely different. There are times you create. There are times you show the solutions. 80% majority of the time, and I don't have any scientific data to support this, but majority of the time, you have to listen to the market. So as a developer, the thing I could say to you is just have that sensitivity. The same time you spent studying how to code and how to design is the same way you now have to spend studying market. You have to study human-centered design. And everything that is involved in the business development part is just make the same time to study that, because it's equally as important as designing of the product, so that you don't design a product that nobody wants. So if you're asking how you do this, how you make the transition, and there may be lots of developers listening to us, you built 10, 15, 20, 30. There's a huge graveyard of products that we built that nobody wants. And one of the big reasons is that we lacked the business aspect, the business acumen, the business mindset to really build this alongside with the customers. But David, there are a couple of more other questions we have to take. We've spent a lot of time on this, but let's take, there are a couple of other questions that led to this. You said rapid fire questions. Let's go. You had some rapid fire questions that you wanted to ask.
Idea or execution, which matters more?
Idea or execution, which matters more? I've seen those situations where young people talk about, this guy stole my idea. This guy stole my ideas. You've had the statement that ideas are a dime a dozen, and it's always about execution. It's always about execution, and you can have the most flawed ideas that's executed well. You iterate as you go, because when you talk about execution, you're executing. You're listening to the market. You're executing alongside the market. You're listening to what the market is saying, and you're incorporating those ideas. So you can start off with an idea that is a mediocre idea, But if you have excellent execution around that idea, you iterate, you listen, you produce, you test, you produce, you test, you produce, you test, you produce, you test. That's powerful execution. So by the time you know it, the product would be 180 degree away from where the original idea is. And so therefore, idea, execution, I'll take execution any day. Ideas are a dime a dozen. You can have the best of ideas. If you executed poorly, you go nowhere. You don't build anything out of poor execution. So I would take execution any day. I have a poor idea. If I have excellent people who can execute, they would take this idea that's a mediocre idea and turn it into something you've never seen before, completely different from where you started off. Because excellent execution requires, that's what it determines, that's what it means. Excellent execution takes you all the way to take this idea that is mediocre, but turn it into something the market wants.
Awesome. Should you raise money or bootstrap?
Should you raise money or bootstrap? Now, for the uninitiated, what it means to bootstrap is you grow a business from the revenue you generate from the business itself without bringing in any external funds. That's what it means to bootstrap. You have $1,000 and you buy, out of the $1,000, you made a profit of 1,200. It's 200, and you now have 1,200. You deploy it 1,200, so that becomes a new capital because you plow back your retained earnings into the business. And that's you bootstrap. You're using the revenue that the business is generating to build the business itself without having outside capital. Now we all know one of the big challenges we have in Sierra Leone and in the country is the complaint currently heavily there. You don't have access to capital. We can't access capital, and it's a big headache. I would say to any entrepreneur, my company chairman Paul Skiller, mentor, has said to me repeatedly, the best form of fundraising is sales. So proving that this makes money and begin to sell quantities of what you're producing. That's about bootstrapping. You prove traction. Early traction. So that is why even when you're talking about people doing pitch decks, when you have a pitch deck that already has traction, that says, this has been the uptake of this product. I have 30, 300, 500 customers already using this product, already paying for this product. The more of that you're able to say, the easier it is to actually even fundraise. And usually it's bootstrapping that takes you to that first level where anybody will take you seriously. It's your bootstrapping, your ability to take what you have now, all the revenues you have to prove a case, to prove that this works, prove that it solves a problem, proves that there's a market. So that once you go into investors, it's that data that you're going to use to go to the to investors. So I will tell you, bootstrap, I will go for bootstrap. You have to go with a bootstrap mindset into the marketplace. Go into a bootstrap mindset. I am going to prove that this works. I would sell this product, I would generate and create traction, and early uptake of the product, and use that data to now go, do fundraise. That's the best way to do it. You can't start from day one and say, put money inside my business. You haven't proven anything.
Yeah. And I feel like if you bootstrap and then you fail, at the end of the day, you learn something.
You always learn. And it's your own money, and you always learn something. And sometimes when you're learning with your own money, you take more care. Once you have money coming in, some people do not have the discipline. The first way they do not buy motor car, and you just change their lifestyle with investors' money. And so having the discipline and mindset to bootstrap using the existing resources of the business, I think it's a better way to start. Next.
Speed or perfection?
Speed of perfection. Now, we talked about speed and speed to market, and it's something I shared with you over and over, how the best of entrepreneurs, early stage of your business, you don't shut down. You don't shut down at all. So there's something I call work-life integration. It's not work-life balance. That means work stays at work, home business stays at home. That's not my experience as an entrepreneur, and obviously in real life that's not what it is. There's work-life integration. What does that mean? You now know at any point in time one of them need you the most, and the one that need you the most at that point in time, that's what you pay attention to. And you don't completely ignore family. but you know, you now need to integrate family to what you're doing. I've seen those situations where you're going to be going away on a business trip. The business trip is going to be for 3, 4, 5 weeks. And then you can now drag your family along with you, take your family along with you, whichever level, at whatever stage of the journey they join, they can now join you there. So there's a bit of work and there's a bit of family. So you can be home. You know, I've had a story about Barack Obama at the White House. He gets home maybe 6, hits the basketball court, you know, whatever it's in the morning or in the evening, but they have time for dinner. Once they close dinner, shuts down, sits around with the family till maybe 10 p.m. And then he goes into the, there's an office he has at the White House. And then he would have a thick wad of files that he has to review and approve and sign at the end of the day. He can be there maybe 2 a.m. And that's work-life integration. And then wakes up in the morning at 6, 7, and hits the basketball court, gets up again. It's integration, it's family. So let's talk about perfection now. If you're talking about speed versus perfection, and as an artist, you can never, the artist will tell you the artwork is never done. You're never finished. You get to the point in time where you ship, get feedback. That is why you have, you know, version 1. What do you think the software developers do? Apple and, you know, get any software, they'll be doing the iteration and be releasing. There's a bug here. They release it into the market with a bug. Once they discover some of the bugs they know, some of the bugs they don't know. But they would release version 1, they release version 2. After 3 weeks, they release version 4. After, iOS and all of these things that they do, it's just fixing. You have to release. You have to take things to the market and then be working on the iteration and then be releasing those to the market. But there's nothing like perfection when it comes to business. There's nothing like perfection. It's the best that you can do at any point in time that you ship into the market, and you're working on making sure that it's better, because there's always something new you could do to make sure this product works better. But ship into the market and be working on the next version. And do the iteration and be rolling it into the market. There's nothing like perfection.
Yeah. Can I buttress also?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Cool. I saw this in my own experience with that of Lear.
Yes.
When we built Lear, we're trying to build a perfect product. So it took like almost 5-6 months to build Lear. But then another competitor launched a week before we launched, and they had 1,000 users.
And you had 40.
We had 40 users. And so one thing you need to think about is also the competition side. In business, there are competitors. So you have to move fast.
Speed to market is very important. Speed to market, get it right, speed to market. You can't be perfect. If you see the first iPhone that was released, the first iPhone in 2005, you can't compare it with what you have now, but it's continuous iteration. Really to the market, you get the feedback for the market, you work on it, the next version becomes better, the next version becomes better, but speed to market is very important.
Yeah. Next question. How do you know if an idea is good?
How do I know if an idea is good? Now, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. You're doing these ideas for customers. Get the customers to try it. That's the only way you know. That is why when you're developing with the customers, that's the best thing to do. From day one, this is the idea. Your ability to work alongside your customers, your ideal client profile. Who are the people this product is intended to serve? And getting their feedback, getting them involved at every stage. Test. You produce version 1, give them to test, get their feedback, because these are the people who would take it up at the end of the day. You want to know that an idea is good? Get somebody to pay. Get somebody to commit to pay. There's a gentleman who had tea, Elixir tea. He came to me maybe 2 years ago, and he's talking about this beautiful tea that he needs to raise some big investments for. And I said, okay, have you tried out this product? And he said, yes. Okay, where did you trial it out? I'm sure he lived up the mountain district. Where did you trial it out? What's the total number of people what quantities of this tea did you give to them? Those are the details you have to document. Total number of people, take their names, telephone number, the quantities you gave them. How long are they supposed to use them? Get the feedback from them. If they say this is powerful, this is the best tea I've ever drank in my life, ever in my life. Next bit, do you want to put in an order? if they can't put in an order, talk is cheap. Anybody can tell you that this is beautiful. You can only validate that when they put their money where the mouth is. Are they ready to put in order for that? So it's really the market that speaks. In the stage that you're developing, are people ready to pay? Even at the testing stage, you have to be able to now have this long list of people. Okay, are you ready to put in an order? How many quantities you need every week? And there are so many things that was wrong with that, because the people that he tested the tea was with are not the ideal client profile. They are the people who wake up in the morning, Nares and Pamine, and Benny. That's what they have. Tea is a luxury. What does tea do? I mean, tea not possible, but it's not possible. Those are the kind of people he tested it. So he was testing it on the wrong market. To know your product is good, build it alongside with the market, and you don't know it's a good one until people are ready to pay. Until people, vote with their leons or dollars. That's when you know this product is good.
Awesome. Next question. Owner mindset versus employee mindset. What's the difference?
So you have two kinds of people in the workplace. And maybe generally in life. You have owner's mentality. Now, one of the things I share with everybody around me, and it's easy to see. It's easy to see. The people who advance and progress in a life, it's not the ones who've worked in an organization for 15, 20 years. The people who stayed longer in organizations would go to war with you. You just can't, I will say you can't join me. You're just here for 3 years. But they normally call them landlord and landladies. They own the business. They own the company. They've been there for so long, but they're taking everything for granted. They don't have the owner's mindset. They don't, because people with owner's mindset, you see, they get promoted very fast, very quickly. They don't have to know anybody. They are the first to arrive. They are the last to go home. They handle the business as if it was their father's property, it was their father's business. That's owner. And it's funny, my experience in life, I've never had any job that I've been involved in that I haven't dealt with it as if it was my father's property. I shared the last time how ACTB Savings and Loans, I was hired to build the business when it had only 5 staff, one branch behind Babadori, and that's where I was. But the talk all over town is that Joe owns the bank. Joe owns the bank. You meet people. I don't own the bank. I never owned the bank. I have shares in the bank. I never owned the bank. But I've never known any other way to handle stuff I do. But as if I own it, as if it was my father's property. It was my father's business. There's this interesting scripture in Luke that says, if you are not faithful with that which is another man's, who would give you yours? There's also this parable about the owner and the hirelings. And the owner, it's a shepherd in the field, tending the sheep, and the lion comes. What does the hireling do? The hireling runs away. What does the owner do? The owner puts up a fight, protects the sheep. So that mindset is very, very important. So I share this with people every day. Unless you could own this stuff, whether it has to do with budget, people will be implementing budget. I will spend half of what some people spend to execute. Afisel, how many years? 22 years at Afisel. There have been a situation where I was overpaid my salary for over a period of 3-4 months. And that was quite some hefty amount by the time I saw it. And so I came back to the MD. I was based in Bo. And by the time I came back to the MD and I said to the MD, I think I've been overpaid my salary. And it's those funny things where you wake up in the night, you've been overpaid your salary, and so fine, nobody no till you tell them for do not they overpay you. So it's on your own day. But I knew no, it's not. I have to go. So I met the MD in the morning, and the guy said, no, I don't think you're right and stuff. And I went to check my ledger where I actually wrote the figures, and I had been overpaid my salary. And that's a long, long time ago. Imagine the amount was, northwards of $1,000, maybe 3,500, something that I accumulated. And they got that one off my salary. It was like having a bloody note, but I'd rather live with that. That's an owner's mindset. And why do you think I'm owning things? Why do you think it's because it's that once you have that mindset, you cannot be ignored. Once you have that mindset, you can only rise up in organizations. I went with that MD to he introduced me to his entire family, outside this country where he lived. I'm still to this day, I'm like family to him. Like I said, introduced me. So owner's mentality, that's what you need. And it's a choice you make. It's not like it's a gift that they give you. It's part of a character that you built, that you said, I'm going to deal with this as if I owned it. I have never had any business to manage that I haven't or worked anywhere that I haven't handled as if it was my father's business, my father's property.
Awesome. And I think the scripture you quoted there, it's really explains what it means to own something.
Ownership. And the guy said, employee, don't be an employee. Don't. We all started off employee. But how do you become to be an owner? It's manage somebody's property as if it was yours. Yeah. That's how you become an owner. 5% shares, 3% shares, 20% shares. That's what you get in the business. People are looking for people they can trust.
Yeah.
People are looking for people they can trust. That's what one official MD told me some time back. People are looking for people they can trust. Once you start the business, but you begin to act like, how you make, okay, I tell you oftentimes, how you make like saying, that you get the business. So, because you want to protect what is there. Please, I beg you, there are two kind of people in this world. There are owners and there are hirelings. There are owners and hirelings. Hirelings are there for the end of the month. They take what is there and they go. Some are neutral. They know the time monkey, they know the loose monkey. But some would be active opposition. For some, it's active opposition. They will be fighting, really pulling things down. Some are active opposition, but some are just passive. Whether the business go before or not go before, So you have that batch. But be an owner. Act like an owner every day. That's what advances you.
Yeah. Awesome. Next question. Should you build in public?
Now, build in public, what it means is that you build in and the public can see what you're doing. They are involved in testing. The public is, whoever you're building this with, you're building and you're testing with them, and they know this is something you're building. You're trying to get their feedback at a very, very early stage of the business. Now, it's a tough thing to do because, but it's something I would advise. It's a tough thing to do, but that's the best way to approach building. So you can't build in secret. You're building something and the people that you're building for have not gotten to test it. So you always have to have people who are representative of your ideal client's profile. Who are the people I'm building for? It's this kind of people. Getting their input at every stage of the building process is a powerful thing to do. Obviously you can get people pushing fingers at your face. But find your ideal kind of profile. If you have people who would be, just critical about you, not having nothing positive to say about the product, watch them. You would know those ones who are constructive. They're constructive, their feedback, but you would know. But yes, I would vote for building in public. Stage by stage, as you're building, you identify your ideal client's profile. Who are the people I'm building with? And who are the categories of people that represent them, and get their feedback constantly as you build, because you're building for them. So their input, getting their input into the building process is very important. Yes, I would any day. I would build in public.
Awesome. Next question. What's the biggest risk in business?
Maybe it's connected to the one. I think this is my thought. The biggest risk in business is to build something nobody wants. It's to build a product that nobody wants. It's the biggest risk, because if you can deal with that, if you can build what people want, you could make money, you could hire the right people, as long as cash is coming in. But building something that nobody wants is one of the biggest error you can commit as an entrepreneur.
Awesome. Next question. How do you compete with bigger companies? The giants.
How do you compete with giants? How do you compete with bigger companies? I would advise you not to even attempt to compete with bigger companies. They have so more resources. Richard Branson wanted to compete with Coca-Cola, and Richard Branson came with Virgin Cola, and they smashed him. The big companies are always big players are always able to squeeze you out of the market. You obviously you have those exceptional cases where they happen, but don't compete. Find a niche. Big companies are too big, and they're slow to react because of their size. So you could look for speed, but craft a niche. There are some markets that the companies they are too big enough to target those markets. The markets are not significant enough. So you want to look at where they're not willing to play. That's where you start. You start there, and sometimes when you begin to get very big, they will just buy you out. And again, ultimately at the end of the day, it was growth and progress. Imagine, whether it was Google buying out YouTube, buying over YouTube for billions of dollars and whatever have you. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the entrepreneur needs to grow. But you can't take off day one and say, I'm going to take on these big guys. You build a niche that they get to be interested in, that they buy that niche. That's the best way to do that. But you can't compete face to face with them. David and Goliath, there's a story in the Bible about David and Goliath where Goliath had spear and everything, the shield and the sword and all of those things. In fact, King Saul, that's what he gave David to go fight. David said, no, I'm not used to it. And I'm not used to these ones. And David had to take a sling where he's stronger. It's a niche. The story has been told that the battle between the eagle and the alligator, the eagle and the crocodile, who wins, it depends on where the battle takes place. If it happens in the water, the crocodile wins. If it happens on the dry land, the eagle wins. So you have those stories, whether it was the crocodile and the lion. But it's really, you don't fight in the field where people are strongest. Like I said, Virgin Cola, Richard Branson wanted to go after Coke, but Coke smashed him. From the supermarkets and everything, he made sure, imagine Branson there are a couple of things he did, but, you put the cola in the supermarket, and Coke would go and buy all the products in the market to make sure they're not there. Yes, now money wants now. The supermarkets want money. We buy out all the products. They have money. They could do it.
Yeah.
So you don't compete directly. They will smash you.
Yeah. All right. Next question. What's the role of failure in building a business?
The role of failure. Failure is tuition. What's the role of failure in building a business? Failure is tuition, and sometimes you don't have to fail outrightly. You don't have to fail outrightly like the business collapses. And sometimes it's in stages, and I did this, it didn't work. I tried this, it didn't work. I tried this product, I tried this iteration, I tried it didn't work. It's just to learn the lessons that are required. I have made a lot of catastrophic mistakes in my journey as an entrepreneur. Each one becomes a lesson for me. So that when I'm talking to you now and I'm saying, hey, David, hey, what I'm talking out of the experience I've had in mistakes I've made. But failure is tuition. You're trying to do something that didn't work, is tuition. Alex Omozi tells a story about how twice in his life, his business came crashing down, completely. He woke up one morning and he had only $1,036, to his name as an entire business. But the lessons that he learned in all of those periods, during those big periods, are part of what, he now has a net worth of whatever he has. And a weekend over 3 days, he would do a sale of $106 million US. Out of books he's written. He has a group of companies now that do $250 million US top line and stuff. But it's the lessons that he learned. But it's tuition. That's the role of failure in our journey.
Awesome. All right. Next question. Do you need a co-founder, or should you just go solo?
Should you go solo? I told you, one of the last guests I had said that's one of the regrets that they had. they wish they had been able to get somebody, a co-founder, somebody to go the journey with them. I would any day go with a co-founder. Like I said, there are two complementing skills that it takes to really build the business from the ground up. There's a product design capabilities, boring, iterative, everyday skills and capabilities, processes, step by step that is needed. There's also the business development, the selling side, the right brain and the left brain. So the person who does the design is a left brain person, even though the creative bit, the innovative bit is a bit right brain. And then the salesperson is completely, totally right brain. So you need the combination. So if I would choose any day, I would go with I'll go to a co-founder. Obviously, there are caveats in terms of how do you find a co-founder. It's not just the skills. You have to have complementing skills that are needed, but also the chemistry. Character, who is the sponsoring, value systems. You have to make sure you are properly aligned with the people you're going in. I was listening to the story of the guy who built Andela and Flutterwave, Nigerian, this young Nigerian. By 35, he had built a unicorn, $1 billion business by age 35, and he had a co-founder from day one. What's the product I have to build? You have to constitute the experts that are required to make sure this is the best that can be done. Maybe 4 or 5 co-founders all worked together to make sure. And the time I was telling the story, the interview I was listening, they were all in the business together. Even Bill Gates, all of them had somebody who was completely the complete opposite of who they are. I don't know about Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg started, Mark Zuckerberg, with Facebook, and you always had this as to who they were, but you need a technical person and a salesperson. So if I had the opportunity any day, I would go with a co-founder rather than go solo.
Awesome. Next question. Big network or great product? What's more valuable?
Big network or great product? Big network or great product?
What's more valuable?
What's more valuable? Now, I would say ultimately at the end of the day, I would go for great product. Because once you have a great product entry in the market, a network entry that you make will just amplify. It amplifies all the way. But if you have a very big network and a very bad product, the network gets you into the game, but it's the quality of the product that keeps you there, keeps you playing and keeps you growing. So if you have a big network, you'd only expose yourself faster if the product is bad. And so I would say, make sure the product works very well so that anybody that you're introduced to, they will see the quality of the product. That's how you increase the network. But I would start with making sure the product is fantastic. Very good product.
Awesome. I think earlier you talked about teachability.
Yes.
And so I think this next question is
Go
going
ahead.
to be a great one.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know when to pivot?
How do you know when to pivot? Now, obviously, again, to the uninitiated, what normally happens in business, you have to know when to stop. To pivot means, I'll give an example of, stuff that we've done in the past where you get to the point where, what I'm doing is not working. The dogs don't like the food. Change the adverts, whatever you do, you realize the dogs don't like the food. Whether you do marketing and design and stuff, it has to be ultimately at the end of the day. So you have to be listening to the market. If you build something the market is not buying, and your ability to, don't fall in love with your business idea, the ability to do real heart-to-heart market. That's why you want to build with the market along with you. But if people are not buying what you're trying to sell, and you have to be humble enough to go back to the market and find out there's something that's wrong about the product. And if the market says this is what should be, you can't insist that you want to go. So you have to pivot. That means you have to tweak, you have to change, you have to redesign this product. So you have to listen to the market. When do you pivot? It's when the market, you could know from the market with humility that the dogs don't want the food. The market doesn't care for what you're trying to sell. It's time. Once you have that data, it's to pivot. It's to do a variation, change the product, or sometimes you have to completely abandon what you were trying to do.
Awesome. Circling back to sales.
That's your last question now.
That's question number 13. So we have two more
That's your
to
last
go.
one. So let's go quickly.
What's the secret to closing your first customers?
Secret to closing your first customers, obviously there's something we've shared about, again, I could go to Alex Omozi's story, where once you build in with the public, you get them to try the product, get them to try it for free. That's what Storm Stuff Alex Omozi has done, where you have this product. How do you prove that this product works? Get your first set of 10, 15, 20 clients to try it for free. Get them to use it. The full cycle. So if you were to spend your marketing, forget about designing, marketing strategy, what takes you to the market, get them to try the product. Get proof that this product can do what you say it can do. Get them to give the testimonials, record those testimonials in writing, record the testimonials in video, have before and after pictures. You could measure them. You could clearly see, anybody who sees the product would know. So that's an easy way for you to now say, now that you've proven this, if something is something that they need on a recurring basis, they can put in their order. And not just put in their order, but they can now refer you to people they know that need this product. So that's the easiest way to get your first customers, is to test for free, for a period. Get them to try, get them to prove, get the testimonials. Either they, if it's something that's needed on a recurring basis, they'll buy, they'll continue to buy, and they would introduce you to their friends.
Awesome. What do you say about the relationship side as the founder? Because I feel like sometimes you have a business and people only buy because they know you and they like you, the founder, and not necessarily because they like the product.
Actually, so you have to move beyond that. The first product they buy would be because they know you. If they're going to buy a second time, it will be because of the product.
Awesome.
Yeah, they want you to feel good, so they buy the first one, but they will try it, and and it doesn't live up to the hype, they won't buy a second time. So they will buy the first time because of you. If they're buying a second time, it would be because of the product itself, because they've proven that it works, it's good.
Okay, but still back again, does the founder relationship important in sales?
It's in the beginning, yes, but it can only go so far. Ultimately, we talked about the product just now. It's really, do you have a good product? The founder is good. For the first purchase, yes. For the first and the beginning, yes. Your relationship with the founder is what calls people in the first place. But whether they're going to buy a second time and keep buying, it's a product, the product that does that.
Awesome.
It's not the relationship with you.
Awesome, cool. Next question, talking about founder. What's one trait every successful founder shares?
What's one trait does every successful founder shares? I think it's an obsession they have with a problem they want to solve. They are obsessed. It's just an obsession. They are obsessed. They sleep and wake. They sleep with the problem. They wake with it. It's the obsession to solve a particular problem. That's the biggest. They are obsessed. Successful founders are obsessed with the problem they want to solve. They sleep and wake every day, and they says, "How do we solve this problem?" And that obsession is what takes you to bed, wakes you up, makes you to have tenacity, like in Tenacity Technologies Limited. But it's what gives you that intensity. It's the obsession to fix a problem, obsession to solve a problem.
Awesome, cool. Last question. What's the real cost of starting a business?
What's the real cost of starting a business? Now, what's the real cost of starting a business? What can I say? The cost of starting a business is tremendous. It's not just the money you put. It's not just the time. It's actually your life. Building business, building any business at any point in time. It's the cost is actually, it's everything you put into this. It's everything. It's everything you put into business, because if you work in as an employee, there's certainty, then you contract. End of the month, there's salary to be collected on the 25th, between the 25th and the 31st. If you maybe a civil servant or you're working for organization where till Tianga, maybe it's the 42nd or the 45th. That's when you get paid. But ultimately, there's predictability. But you're working as an entrepreneur. The entrepreneur and it gets, it's the last paid. Leaders, it's last. And if there's anything remaining, so there's a lot that goes into building a business. And even you, at your age, and just building your first business, what you were talking about, how hard it is, and how difficult, how challenging it is. It's your life. It's your life. So that's why you have to know you really called to be an entrepreneur, and you can actually be an owner without having to be an entrepreneur. You can have an owner's mindset. You have intrapreneur, you have entrepreneur. So an intrapreneur is a person who behaves like an entrepreneur in somebody else's business. They manage it. That is why you may have only one Steve Jobs, may have only one Bill Gates, but you have thousands of solid people who are entrepreneurs. Some of the richest people in the world, apart from the founders, the next are those people who went into somebody's business and managed it and owned it as if it was their property, and they could see from them. So they now gave them 5% shares, 8%, 10%, shares. By the time you know it, the most richest, and once you move forward from the founder, the next richest people are those who joined, but took on these businesses as if they owned those businesses.
Awesome.
And it shows.
Talking about this topic, I think it's really an important one.
Yes.
You mentioned entrepreneur.
An intrapreneur.
Intrapreneur.
Yes.
And entrepreneur.
Yes.
Now, let's say you're a young African, you're here in West Africa, you're here in Sierra Leone.
Yes.
What should you choose? If you're just getting started, you're young.
What do you choose from what?
What do you choose? Is it entrepreneurship?
No. So let me say this is what I want to advise young people. That's why I was talking about entrepreneurship. You don't have any right to call yourself a CEO. You've never managed any business before. It's painful. That is why you have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 businesses. They're not going anywhere. But your ability to know, we share the story of David Pakima. The only reason why David will be this solid is because of 5 years at Standard Chartered Bank, 5 to 7 years at Standard Chartered Bank, the years he spent working at Zain and practicing in somebody else's P&L. Practicing. It's not because you registered a business, work for somebody. So become an entrepreneur, work in somebody else's business. What do you think I'm doing? I do a couple of things and a lot of things. Not all of us will end up being a Bill Gates. Not all of us. Like I said, if you count everyone who are built in, the entire world, maybe 5,000, 10,000. What's the workforce of the entire world? It's millions. And some of them are earning very comfortable. The person who's maybe the second richest person in Africa, or one of the richest people in Africa, I was hearing somebody the other day, is the CEO of MTN. Not even the CEO. It's somebody that works for MTN, and it's not an owner of MTN. No. It's just the CEO, somebody that was hired, was one of the richest people in Africa. Because even as an entrepreneur, you can make money.
Yeah.
You can make money, you can grow. And so let's rally together. Let's have the humility to go work for people. Let's have the humility to go show ownership in somebody else's business in exchange for shares in that business, rather than everybody trying to be a CEO. So because it's painful, you go suffer.
It's painful. Yeah.
You suffer too much, and so I've seen it happen over and over again.
Awesome.
So David, let's wrap up this stuff. It's a very, very interesting time. This is the first time we've done a format like this. Let me know what you think, or if you have any question that you wish David had asked that he hadn't asked, post those questions in the comments. We would respond to each and every one of his comments. This is the first time we're doing this thing. We want to say thank you and close with what we've always closed with. If you think you can, because your behavior would follow that belief. And if you think you can't, you won't, because your behavior would follow those beliefs. You're running a business. Startup Body Shop has this diagnostic tools that is now online, www.startupbodyshop.com. Look for the diagnostic tools there. Fill it out. In 15 minutes, you will know what's the biggest constraint you have in your business. And a workshop of VIP consulting. And a 90-day plan can be designed and roll out for you. Startupbodyshop.com. On behalf of our sponsors, AfriCell, AfriMoney, RC Bank, Sierra Tel, and Startup Body Shop. And we guest today from Tenacity Technologies Limited. How tenacious are you?
10 over 10.
10 over 10. But anyway, stay pushing, stay tenacious, build your dream, post your comments, and ask your questions in the comments below. Till we meet back, keep designing, keep building, because we believe this is a life you can shape. This is a life you can design. It's a life and business by design. God bless.
This is the JB Show, and it's your life by design.